Self-worth is worthless. Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Sult. I'm a medical doctor and functional medicine practitioner.
I'm Elizabeth, an RN and the wellness coach here at Just Be Well.
So, self-worth is worthless. You know, we talk about self-worth and self-esteem and all these things. And I want to talk to you about why it is a problem and then, of course, the solutions.
I think we've all heard the saying, no fear. We all have fears. And behaving as though we don't have fears creates an internal struggle with ourselves. Just the same as, behaving on a fearful level when we're fearful of everything, even though we shouldn't be, creates a struggle. So I really feel that there is a balance in the fear factor.
Right. You know, this idea of self-worth, we can never be afraid. We can always have to be confident. We always have to know what to do next. You know, it really is analogous to this no fear thing. Well, it's just ridiculous. Of course we're going to have times when we have fear. It leads to this idea of you have to have this relentless self-worth and self-esteem and self-confidence. It leads to false confidence.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't allow us to ask for help when we need it.
It doesn't allow us to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Because we can't. That's not us. We know it all. We have it all.
And this relentless call for self-esteem really leads to us feeling like we're never enough. I never have enough self-esteem. I'm never good enough. I never know, what's happening. It goes back to what I like to say, two things. Don't let yesterday take up too much of today, and don't let who you think you should be beat up on who you are. Mm-hmm. You are enough. So before we get to the solution, I want to tell you about a few things. Please subscribe and hit the bell if you like this content, and stick around to the end, because at the end we're going to talk about some really lusty free stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you're giggling right now, look up the word lusty, because it probably doesn't mean what you think it means.
No, it doesn't.
So, at one time I wanted to start a company called Appropriate Attitude with the subtitle, because sometimes you should be afraid. Sometimes you should be afraid. You really should be evaluating your abilities, and you should work with your strengths. Mm-hmm. And get help with your weaknesses.
Yeah, and we feel like our weaknesses are weak parts of us. So we need to work on those weaknesses to build them up so we can be better. But we need to admit that we have weaknesses and then also concentrate on our strengths. So it is in our strengths that we become the best person we can be, not trying to concentrate on those weaknesses, because we all have strengths and weaknesses. Why not work with your strengths?
Most of the time when you hear about weaknesses, people are talking about, well, you got to work on those. You got to make those better. Mm-hmm. Study after study after study shows, recognize your weaknesses, delegate to your weaknesses, but run with your strengths. Mm-hmm. If you figure out what your strengths are, do what you do best and delegate everything else, or get some kind of help with everything else. So accept your strengths, accept your weaknesses, and be self-aware rather than worrying about self-confidence or self-worth or self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Being self-aware allows you to leverage all that you are.
Mm-hmm. And really utilize your strengths, and it allows you to bring them into your life.
And be vulnerable with your weaknesses. If you're worried about your self-confidence, you're not going to be vulnerable with your weaknesses. And sometimes the very best thing to do is to run with your strengths and be very vulnerable with your weaknesses, and just say, that's not my strength. I have dyslexia. I can't spell my own name. So people, just the other day, somebody wanted help with a project and they wanted help with editing. And I said, you know what? I can content edit, but I cannot spell edit. I cannot do grammar and English editing for you, but I can absolutely content edit. That's knowing my weakness. Mm-hmm. So consider going to a website, high5test.com. That's high spelled out, the numeral or the letter 5, or numeral, the numeral 5 and test, high5test.com. And there's a strength finder there. So you can kind of,
free.
It's free, and you can get a handle on your strengths, and it's just a place to start thinking about it. It's not the end all that is all.
No. There are some great tests out there that you can take. So you can
Yep.
really, some of us don't even know our strengths. Like, what are my strengths? Am I using them in my day-to-day life? Am I bringing them into my work? My strengths, two of them were empathy and coaching. So I am a nurse and a health coach. I was a nurse before I knew these strengths, but
Right.
I really see how I was gravitating towards the professions that helped me to utilize these strengths to my full potential.
Right. And, often we're so focused on, oh my gosh, I have these weaknesses. Well, that we don't even consider our strengths. So do it the opposite. Consider your strengths, be vulnerable with your weaknesses, and seek help. So, how can you leverage your strengths in your everyday life? Think that through. How can you, if you're caught on your weaknesses, how can you reframe that problem so that you're functioning more from your points of strength rather than your issues of weakness?
Yep, and overcoming your day-to-day things by using your strengths. So how can you overcome problems? By focusing on your strengths.
Exactly. And then how can your strengths compensate for your weaknesses? I grew up in school with dyslexia believing that spelling was more important than ideas. That is a toxic thought. I one time in college, I turned in a paper, and you could always tell my grades by whether or not I had a girlfriend, because my girlfriends usually corrected my spelling, right? So I was between girlfriends. I signed in this paper, and it's getting handed back to me, and the instructor actually says this was a really interesting paper. Well, thank you. And I take the paper from him. It's got a D on it. And I walk up to him later and I go, well, you told me this was interesting. How come I got a D? There are too many misspelled words. Ideas are less important than spelling? I guess so. But no, don't allow that in your life. So, what could I have done in this age? It's about a 10-second job to upload it to a website and hire somebody for a couple of bucks to proofread it, right?
Right.
Get somebody who's good at what you're not good at. And fortunately, she spells really well.
Well, and that takes it also into perspective of, focusing on your strengths. So if you're dyslexic, you're probably not going to be an editor.
Certainly not a copy editor, maybe a content editor.
Yeah. So, you have to, I always think of that great quote by Einstein: if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life thinking it's an idiot.
Right.
Fish don't climb, they swim. So what is your strength?
Right. The other Einstein quote I love is, fish would be the last species to discover water. Because they're immersed in it. They don't notice it. So, we're strange animals with strange ideas, and we're all, it's sort of the human condition to be kind of phobic, and maybe we tend to focus on the negative. Rare people focus on the positive, right? We all know a few of those, but most of us are mired, the old saying, how can you soar with the eagles when you're down in the mud with the turkeys? So, self-worth. Think instead about self-awareness and incorporating the totality of who you are. This is Just Be Well. It is the channel about whole life wellness. We use functional medicine. Functional medicine is about everything from mental, social, and spiritual wellness all the way to digestive health and energy and detoxification. It is a big, big topic. If you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe. Please hit the bell so you get notifications. And in the comments, there will be a link to our community. You can join our community, participate in live Q&As and webinars and all kinds of interesting things. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.